Scrolling is absolute garbage. It is probably the worst thing that you can do for your brain outside of taking drugs, and I will show you exactly why. In 2024, I quit scrolling forever, and I went from being a lazy procrastinator to running 8 marathons in 8 months, spending 4 hours a day learning Spanish for over 150 days, and getting in the best shape of my life. After watching this video, you will not want to scroll ever again. Now, I don't have any fancy editing, there's no stimulating music. If you're here to be entertained, then waste your time elsewhere. This is for people who want to learn. Let's go. Now, there are 3 huge reasons that scrolling is absolutely horrible for you, but the first big one is that it destroys your reward system. When we think about scrolling, we should think of it like digital heroin because it essentially is heroin. It is working on so many pleasure centers and enjoyment centers in your brain that you just love it. There's a reason that you can't stop scrolling. There's a reason that every spare moment you're reaching into your pocket, you're going to where the Instagram or the TikTok is and you're scrolling straight away. And it's because it feels so damn good. Now, there are 5 really important reasons that it feels so good. First of all, it's very visually appealing. Usually the short form content that performs the best, that feels really good, is something that's visually appealing because it has to grab your attention. If you're just doing this all the time, you need to have a reason to stop and actually watch the video. Usually that hook is something that's visually appealing. Some kind of bright lights, flashy colors, maybe something sexually suggestive, some way to be very visually appealing. So this activates the visual senses. It makes you feel really good. That's the first one. Second one here is there's stimulating sounds. Usually it's the best part of a song, something really stimulating, something that sounds really amazing to keep you captivated and keep you hooked. So it activates not only your visual senses, but also your hearing to feel really good. Next thing is it's designed for your tastes. There is probably billions of pieces of short form content out there, but there's only certain ones that you watch. And these are the ones that are designed for your taste. Now, what happens when you scroll and what happens when you stop scrolling for a bit to watch a video is the algorithm's understanding you. It's understanding what you enjoy watching. If you stop to watch a video, you're essentially telling the algorithm, I like this stuff. This kind of stuff I enjoy. So what does the algorithm do? It provides you more of this stuff. So actually over time, this is becoming more and more stimulating as it understands you, it understands your desires, your tastes, what you like, and it becomes more stimulating over time, which is pretty crazy. Next big one is that there are random rewards. You don't know what you're getting. You cannot predict what the next thing that's going to come up when you scroll. It's completely random. And this is very exciting for us. There's a reason that gamblers get addicted to gambling, and it's because there's a randomness, there's an uncertainty, and this captivates us. This makes us want to keep scrolling over and over again. It gets us addicted to these random rewards, which activates another pleasure center of the brain. Finally, it is short and intense. Unlike binge watching TV shows or watching movies or playing video games where it's drawn out a little bit, you still get the visually appealing, the stimulating sounds designed for your taste, but it happens over a longer period of time. When it comes to scrolling, it's short and intense. Most of us, in fact, the average is spending 8 seconds per clip, right? This means that something has to be visually appealing, have stimulating sounds, has to be designed for your taste and provide random rewards, all within 8 seconds. And you don't go onto TikTok and spend 8 seconds and get off. You might spend an hour there. This means that you're going through this loop, receiving these rewards 450 times every single hour, which is just absolutely insane. To hit this many pleasure centers of the brain, this many times, nearly 1,000 times every single hour, you can see why I call this digital heroin. This is pretty crazy. This stuff feels amazing for us. So what is this doing to our brain exactly? Well, this is where it gets quite interesting. So you have this baseline level of dopamine, this normal level of dopamine that your brain produces over the course of the day, okay? It's operating at a pretty normal level right now. You're just a normal person. So you might go about your day and you do a bit of work, right? That produces a bit of dopamine, okay? Maybe you work out, okay? It's producing a bit of dopamine. But then you introduce the scrolling. You introduce the short form content, the digital heroin. What happens is it releases a crazy amount of dopamine, a lot in a really short period of time. Feels really good. And then you go back to your daily life and you do a bit more work, right? Maybe you catch up with friends and you scroll again. Now, what you can see here is these massive peaks, these massive spikes of dopamine, which is coming from the scrolling. What your brain has to do is it has to constantly regulate your dopamine so it's around normal. It's normal dopamine on average. Now, your average level of dopamine is around here somewhere if you exclude the scrolling. But as soon as you include the scrolling, your average goes up significantly. The amount of dopamine that you're producing, the amount of total dopamine goes up a lot, a significant amount. Now, what your brain has to do is it has to regulate. It has to bring things back to reality. So what happens is your brain has to go, okay, well, you're producing a crazy amount of dopamine. You're producing too much dopamine. We need you to be around average again. To do that, we need to bring down your dopamine baseline. We need to bring your dopamine baseline way, way down, because what happens when your dopamine baseline is down is you start the day and you have these peaks and troughs, but on average, you're back to where you were. You're back to baseline. Now, great. On average, you're producing the same amount of dopamine. Not much has changed, right? No. The big difference here is that think about the amount of dopamine you're producing for the work you're doing. Think about the amount of dopamine you're producing for the workouts. Think about the amount of dopamine you're producing for socializing, being around friends. It's now significantly less. It feels a lot worse to do things that are productive, things that are moving you forward towards your goals. This is a big, big problem because dopamine is essentially motivation. It's essentially drive to do certain behaviors. If your baseline level of dopamine is really, really low because you've been abusing all of these high stimulating activities, this scrolling, you basically aren't going to want to do anything. And there's been a really good study done on this. It's actually been done with rats. What they did is they severed certain nerves, certain connections in the brains of the rats so that the rats would not produce dopamine. They put these rats in a cage. On the other side of the cage, they put some food, whether that's some cheese, rat food, whatever you want it to be. What would happen is the rats that didn't have any dopamine at all would not cross the cage to eat the food. If food was not placed in the mouths of these rats, they would essentially starve to death. They would die and starve to death if they weren't hand-fed food into their mouth. They had such low motivation that they would not cross the cage to eat any food at all. This is essentially what we're turning ourselves into right now. Because our dopamine baseline has dropped so much, to regulate for the fact that we're producing a lot of dopamine from these easy, high stimulation activities, we've ended up like the rats, where we have no dopamine or very, very low dopamine, and we don't want to do anything. Now, sure, we might move across the room to eat some food, but are we going to be going out there and running marathons? Are we going to be going out there and cranking out a bunch of work for our business? Probably not, because we don't have the motivation, we don't have the desire and craving to do any of these actions. We have zero energy to do anything except for more scrolling, except for more of this digital heroin. As you can see, this is why I call it digital heroin, because we're essentially ending up like junkies that don't want to do anything except the incredibly destructive behavior. Now, what's the point of this video? The point of this video is to stop you from scrolling ever again. How is this possible? Well, I created this system called the Fortress system. And the way this works is that for you to have a trigger to do a bad behavior, a bad action, something like scrolling, for that trigger to become the action of scrolling itself, it has to go through each layer of your fortress. If we make any individual layer of this fortress impenetrable, then you will not scroll again. Right now, we're focusing on strengthening your beliefs, specifically your beliefs around scrolling. If you fundamentally, truly believe that scrolling is a terrible, terrible thing for you to do, then you probably will not do it. For example, I bet right now you believe that it is an absolutely appalling thing to punch an old lady in the face. Obviously. That's why you don't do it, because you truly believe that it is a terrible thing to do. If you create such a disgust for consuming this brain rot from scrolling as you would punching an old lady in the face, you're never going to scroll again. So hopefully by the end of this video, you build up really strong beliefs around scrolling that makes it a lot less likely for you to want to partake in this terrible, terrible behavior. Now, I've used this system to get rid of all online entertainment by myself since 2024. If you want to learn how to use this system to get rid of any online entertainment, including doom scrolling, then you can do that for free. I'll leave a link in the description below. Second reason why scrolling is one of the biggest nerfs that you can do to your brain is that it trains a terrible attention span. It is essentially training your brain to be impulsive, short-term thinking, always look to escape rather than to face your problems. It is shocking. Now, let's think about you right now. Let's think about you saying, okay, I want to start a business. I want to build this business that gives me the time freedom, the location freedom to live the life I want to live. Fantastic. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to build this business. Great. What have I got to do? Well, I've essentially got to sit down and I've got to focus on one individual task, not hundreds of tasks, one task. For a few seconds? No. For multiple hours at a time? Okay. For one day? No. For months to years? All right, but it probably feels really good, right? No, it produces very little reward. You're not receiving a lot of dopamine for doing this. All right, sure, but it's pretty easy, right? No, it is incredibly difficult. This is what you're faced with. This is your current task, your current challenge. How does scrolling fit into this? Well, scrolling is training the opposite of what is required for you to build this business. It is doing the complete opposite. When you're working, you have to focus on one thing, one context per hour. When you're doom scrolling, if you're consuming a piece of content every 8 seconds, like the average person, you're focusing on 450 different contexts per hour. Okay, but what about the reward? Well, if you're working, it's not producing a lot of reward. You're not feeling a huge amount of dopamine. You're not getting this euphoric sensation. When you're doom scrolling, you are. You're feeling amazing. You're feeling fantastic. This dopamine, this rush, this great feeling, this is your brain rewarding you for doing 450 different contexts in 1 hour, basically being distracted. Okay, how about difficulty? Well, if you're doom scrolling, what are you doing? Well, you're putting your hand in your pocket, you're pulling out a 135 gram brick, and you're swiping your finger up it multiple times for an hour. That's what you're doing. You're probably sitting on your ass. Very easy. Working, challenging. If you're focusing on high leverage 80-20 activities, it's hard work. It's hard to do. You have to focus and be disciplined. Look at these two things. What do you want to do right now? Do you want to focus on one thing that doesn't feel really good and is hard? Or do you want to focus on 450 little things that feel really good and are super easy to do? I think we know the answer to this. This is pretty obvious. You're going to go for the digital heroin. You're going to go for the doom scrolling. And what's happening? Well, you're receiving all of this reward. You're feeling really good. You're training your brain to seek and associate feeling good with constantly switching tasks, with not concentrating on one thing, but rather concentrating on 450 things every single hour. Your brain currently has this dialogue going on. I want to focus on hundreds of easy tasks that feel really good. This is what you're training your brain to say. I want hundreds of different tasks going on right now, and I want to feel really good for doing them. So this is training a terrible attention span, and it's also training your brain's fear response. When we sit down to do work, we're going to be confronted with something hard. We're going to be confronted with something challenging. Generally, work isn't all easy. If it's all easy for you, that's great, but for most people, there are difficult, challenging things in your work. If you sit down to work and you find something challenging, what do? Well, we try to escape. We usually try and avoid the task. We try and find something else that's a bit easier, that feels a bit better. Okay, I'm a little bit scared. What am I gonna do? All right, well, I guess I'll go into my pocket, I'll pull out my phone, and I'll start scrolling. I'll do something that feels really easy. I'm gonna escape right now, okay? And what happens when you scroll? Well, you feel great. You feel amazing. You have a very high reward. You get this sensation. You have the random rewards. You have the bright colors, the visually stimulating things. You have the sounds that feel really great. It feels great. You get a dopamine hit. And what happens? Well, you've essentially trained your brain that whenever you're working and something is challenging, something is difficult, you should escape. You should run away from this task, because when you do, you feel really good. You're training your brain to escape, to rather than confront the problems, rather than solve the issues. The fear, by the way, generally a mile wide and an inch deep. You poke into it for a second and you realize, this wasn't so hard whatsoever, but it required a little bit of focus, a little bit of thinking outside of the box. Now, let me avoid that. let me scroll. You're training your brain to escape. Now, what is escaping? Well, it's essentially being impulsive. It's essentially saying, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. I don't enjoy this. Let me do something that feels good. Is that not the definition of being impulsive? Running away from things that feel really challenging or hard and going towards things that feel really nice and good and safe and cozy? We're training ourselves to do this because of the way our reward system works, because of the dopamine that we're releasing. We're constantly being rewarded for these really, really stupid behaviors. Focusing on hundreds of things, not being able to concentrate on one task, running away, hiding. We're training our brain to be useless, just to be terrible. If you're someone who's confronted with problems and wants to escape and run away, if you're not someone who can concentrate on individual tasks, what are you going to do? What can you actually get done? There are very few things that you'll be capable of doing if you're the person that constantly runs away and you're the person that can't concentrate on an individual task. There are just very, very few things that you can do in your life. Finally, it fuels anxiety. So not only do you have a terrible reward system so you don't want to do any behaviors, every time that you go to do work and it becomes hard, you run away and you can't focus on individual tasks, but you're also more anxious. This doesn't sound too good, does it? No, it's not good at all. When we're consuming this short form content, which by the way, we don't have control over, we are reacting to what's in front of us when we scroll, what are we seeing? What are we seeing a lot of the time? Well, especially if you're an ambitious person, you're probably seeing people in really good shape, people who are super jacked, more jacked than you, and probably younger than you. You're seeing people who are really rich, way richer than you, and way younger than you, and people who just have supermodel girlfriends, and they're younger than you. And you look at yourself and you go, well, I'm not a professional bodybuilder at age 21. I don't have a Lambo. I'm not super rich. I don't have a supermodel girlfriend. I'm useless. I suck. Anxiety through the roof. And it's not as if you're doing this once or twice. You're exposing yourself to this hundreds of times every day. Hundreds of times you're exposing yourself to people that you perceive as better than you. And they're not necessarily better than you, but they're very good at showing the edited highlights of their lives, which is better than your non-edited highlight and the internal monologue you have within your brain. Anxiety through the roof. Absolutely through the roof. You're not feeling really good. It's also kind of making you unhappy, right? If you think about the happiness as an equation, what you have and what you want, right? If what you want is the exact same as what you have, you're going to be a pretty happy person, right? You're just content with what you have. But if you're someone who's constantly consuming all of this information, you're constantly seeing all these people who are better than you. Cool, sure, you have a bit of motivation and desire to be better, but it's also making this really high, making your wants and making your desires very, very high. So you want all of these things that you don't have. And you're creating this huge divide between what you have and what you want, making you pretty unhappy, making you pretty anxious. Not great. The scrolling also provides contradictory advice. This is a huge one. This contradictory advice, this information overload, going to make you feel really anxious. If you're someone who wants to be in great shape, for example, and you go, okay, I got to get on a diet. I need a diet that works for me, that's going to allow me to get in great shape. And you start scrolling and you come across the keto diet, right? Great, the keto diet. I'm going to eat no carbs and I'm going to get absolutely shredded. I'm going to be just burning fat all the time. So you go on the keto diet and hey, it's working pretty well. But then you see someone else who's like, yeah, the keto diet's good, but the animal-based diet, this is the way to go. So what do? You go, oh, okay, the animal-based diet, this is the best one. I'm going to go on this. I'm going to go to the animal-based diet. I'm only going to eat meat, fruit, honey, and dairy. This is going to be the best one. And you do that for a couple of weeks and you're scrolling some more and then you see, no. The vertical diet, this is where it's at. This is the best one. You should be doing this. I've done this myself. I keep cycling through all these different diets because I keep getting all of this new information and, oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do that. You're receiving all of this noise and it's making you very anxious. It's making you move around and change your tactics all the time. And the only thing that you don't unlock is the consistency, which is going to allow any of these diets to work. Think about your money-making strategies, right? Let's say you start off and you realize, oh, drop shipping. This is the way. This is my key to making a bunch of money online. This is going to allow me to be free. So you start drop shipping, maybe you set up a store, maybe you buy a course and you're doing it and it's like, okay, this is good. Then after a while you go, oh, this is hard. This is a lot harder than I thought it would be. What about social media marketing? Why don't I start a social media marketing agency? People are making a lot of money doing this. This is the new thing. This is the best thing. And you start off and it's really exciting. And after a while, it gets hard. And you go, nah, you know what? I need to start selling courses online. This is how I'm going to make all my money. I'm going to sell this has to be the way. This is right. So you get into selling courses and after a while you go, oh, this is kind of hard. Maybe I should go back to drop shipping. And you just go through these cycles of things get hard, you receive new advice, and you try and change things up, okay? Let's say you want the best workout program, and you go, okay, it's push-pull legs. This is the way, this is the gospel, this is the thing. And then after a while you go, no, it's the upper-lower program. And then you go, no, it's full body. And you keep changing around and going in circles. The reality is, they all work, but they won't work if you do all of them, right? You could get super jacked on keto. You can get super jacked on animal-based. You can get super jacked on the vertical diet, right? You can become a multi-millionaire drop shipping, a multi-millionaire social media marketing, a multi-millionaire selling courses, right? You can get super jacked with any of these, but none of this will happen if you do all of them. If you keep switching around, if you keep changing, if you keep going, this is hard, let me try something else. And what's fueling all of this? What's fueling all this is you're getting lots of different information, an information overload, and all of this information is probably good, right? There might be some garbage information, but generally the information is pretty good. The real problem is that you're receiving too much. You haven't allowed the inputs, the actions that you're doing to actually unlock the results you want to get. All of this stuff works, right? Every single one of these things work. I have no doubt about it. But none of these work when it gets hard and you switch, and it gets hard and you switch. And what happens is you don't get the compounding effects of any of these things, and it just all goes down the toilet because you have so many different pieces of information, so much brain fuzz, so much overload that you become super anxious, you try and change things around, and nothing ever works. Hopefully this has really sunk in now that this is a horrible thing for your brain. Not only is this making you less motivated, giving you less drive to want to do work, not only is it destroying your attention span and making you distracted all the time, not only is this making you super anxious, making you run away from your problems, it's making you a really ineffective individual that is not really capable of achieving all that much. So hopefully this changed your beliefs, changed your thinking around scrolling so you're less likely to do it. If you found this video interesting, if you got some value out of it, then there's another video here that you might be interested in. So I'll see you there.